Hello, everyone. Welcome to Late Night Unite. We are taking this down on a Monday, not a Tuesday, because I think I said scheduling is difficult and life is hard. But here we are, Sierra Dawn finally making it in after pushing last week. It was a hockey game. We went into that. We're Canadian. We appreciated it. It was worth it. Now we're back on this Monday at 11:40, the correct start time here with audio. Sierra, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you being here.
Of course, the right day, the right time, the right audio. Everything's peachy keen.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
the third box of the three boxes you have to check, right? Date, time, flip
You're
on the
not a
audio.
content creator until you unmute, like you mute something and have to make that realize it. That's literally the are you a real content creator? Is
Well,
just like the first thing on the list.
well, inducted and dragged and forged in the fires of content creation was I just now, because that was miserable. But okay, so Sierra, I'm gonna have to have you rehash this for those
Yeah.
that are out there that may not know who you are. I doubt there's anybody, but please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Sierra Dawn. Yes, that is my real name, not a stage name. But I am a full-time esports personality. I do hosting, I do commentating, I also do content creation, which led me to this path, which is pretty amazing. So
We'll change the texture to keep you guessing a little bit here. How did the transition from content creator to esports talent is what I'll call it. That's accurate. Esports
yeah,
talent. That's the correct nomenclature there. How did that transition actually go? Obviously, you find opportunities, but was it a moment where you're like, okay, I really need to devote more time into the esports talent portion, and that'll take away from the content creation? And it needs to be kind of like a hard shift, or was it kind of a natural kind of gradient transition over time?
it just all of a sudden happened. I know that sounds really weird, but one day I was a content creator that was just creating less and less content because I was busy. I felt like more and more often it was like, hey, sorry y'all, no stream this weekend. I'm on a cast. Like, oh, I can't stream these days. I'm casting. I have this. And it kept happening, and then I one month I managed to pay my rent with solely money from esports and casting, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrated that, was still like, okay, this is a side gig, still a content creator. And then somewhere along the point, I realized I wasn't creating content and I was only focusing on the esports part of it, which was kind of like a wait a second, when did that happen? So I don't know exactly when it happened. It was kind of like January, February, but it just all of a sudden I just wasn't doing content.
You have to be excited about the change. At least it's something fresh and new. Is content creation something you're going to keep kind of, when I say content creation, maybe like just focus on streaming perhaps and do that, maybe one day a week or something? Or is it just, I'll do that when I want to, but I'm really just kind of dialed into this path right now and not too concerned about the other thing?
More so when I can. Like, I got to stream today. I streamed twice yesterday because I had 3 days off from broadcast, which is nice to just have that time. But it'll definitely be kind of a bit more of a backseat, not because I don't love content creation, but because this career in esports is something I've always wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And with the content creation, I think allowing to have it as a hobby as opposed to as a career is a really different thing in terms of how you approach it, as well as like my enjoyment of it. So I love being a full-time content creator, don't get me wrong, but the stresses of it and how it was really meshing with like just myself as a personality, my own mental state wasn't the healthiest for me. So it'll definitely be nicer as a hobby going forward.
Well, there you go. For those that may not know, of course, people could have seen you comment doing some commentary work for the March finals for NA and EU just a few short days ago. But what are some of the other games that you've been working on lately?
So I literally in a meeting the other day, they called me an esports chameleon because I like to try and get into anything I can. It started with Pokemon VGC and then went into Valorant. Then with hosting, it means that I've gotten to pursue opportunities outside of just the games that I'm, knowledgeable enough to cast. So League of Legends being one, I started hosting for the English broadcast of the LFL in January. I don't know anything about League. I know a lot about League now, but I definitely couldn't cast it. But being able to host meant I could actually pursue that. So then Valorant, League, CSGO now, Apex Legends, Pokemon VGC, Pokemon Unite now, and gotten a few offers for other things that I've had to turn down for mostly scheduling reasons. So literally anything I can do, honestly. It's been fun.
That is just an impressive resume without a doubt, just in terms of the games, of course, and the amount of experience you're getting certainly can't be understated. And being thrown into a bunch of different things, it's got to help develop and keep you on your toes. Has that been? I think it's beneficial, but maybe not. Maybe switching so often it keeps you off your game. I don't know. How does that felt going into all these different directions in terms of games?
So I definitely sit a lot and study things beforehand to try and make sure I'm on like the right page going into something. I did turn down a different game, like another MOBA related game, the same weekend, Pokemon Unite, because I did feel like it would get too scrambled at that point, and it was like, okay, these are pretty similar games. I don't want to get into any issues with terminology and stuff, so I'm just gonna put this aside. But normally, days before the events, I go through notes, make sure all like the characters in game, names of stuff, any terms that I need to know, that I rehash everything to make sure that I don't really go into one game with my mind still on another one.
That's just kind of like a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, which I asked before, but we have to rehash it now. We have to do it all over again. Of the games you're actually commentating on gameplay, which has been your favorite or the one you've had the most fun with so far?
See, I love Valorant so much. Like, I've loved the game since it came out. I always knew before it came out that it was going to be amazing. So that's been my favorite to commentate. I will say though, actually, and this isn't biased or me sitting here being like, oh, I feel like I have to say this. I loved casting Pokemon Unite. I feel like with the length that the games were, that it was great for my ADHD. So that was really, really nice. But also just the constant hype around it. I knew that I would go into it enjoying it, but I didn't really realize how much I would enjoy it, so that was nice.
I mean, things are moving in Pokemon Unite. In 10 minutes, it's what, maybe the first 75 seconds you get to kind of breathe, and then the action kind of kicks off. And
sometimes not even.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. We were talking a little bit before, but I am so impressed with just how Valorant looks, the kind of the feel of it when people play, the different aspects in it where you kind of have like these ultimate powers, but also it kind of has like the kind of CSGO kind of like purchasing aspect of it. That's a lot of things to keep track of, and it's pretty impressive from top to bottom. When you go into that particular game, are you even or do you focus on more one aspect of the game, for example, the actual gameplay, the use of the ultimates and stuff like that? Or are you trying to kind of break down what the purchasing, like the buying rounds are and how that'll impact the game? Like, how do you approach, because, I mean, each game changes so much.
Yeah, so I definitely think that Valorant is one of those games that if you don't play it consistently, it becomes infinitely harder to cast. I feel like the fact that I play it so often that my brain is always in that mode. Like, I'm playing like ranked games with my friends even a couple hours ago, and I'm like, okay, this is what our buy should look like because for this is how it's going to stack up for the next couple of rounds, and it's just something that more so you play the game for so often that doesn't even come as anything more than just a second thought to you. But Valorant, I think, is really important too, instead of hybrid cast, that it really is a play-by-play and a color commentator, because the color commentator can really take that seat and focus on how things are being broken down, whereas play-by-play can focus on actually breaking down the action, and it's definitely a game where I think it's necessary.
So what's your overall kind of stance on the approach? Do you prefer the more traditional, like, you are play-by-play, you are color, let's bring our kind of unique perspectives on those together and cast it? Or do you like kind of dipping into the hybrid strategy from time to time?
I absolutely hate color commentary. I am really bad. I'm bad at it. I don't enjoy it. I'm a very play-by-play person. I will go into hybrid depending on the game. Apex Legends, I don't know about at the highest level, but at least at a more grassroots level, it's very hybrid-y just because of how the game is. So I did enjoy hybrid as long as you have like good banter with your co-caster. But in terms of Valorant, I've done one event as a color commentator, and I have never felt more uncomfortable on a broadcast ever. I did not enjoy it.
Just a little bit of imposter syndrome, you think?
No, I think it's really important to recognize where your strengths and weaknesses are, and I think one of my strengths is actually just sitting there and excitably talking about a game because I'm actually just passionate about the games, whereas actually breaking it down on a more analytical level is something that when I'm watching the game at home chilling on broadcast, I can do, but I can't as much in the moment because I'm more focused on like what's happening in that moment play-wise instead of on the bigger level, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense because that's how my brain works too. I mean,
Play by play life, right?
just in the moment, that's like what gets me just so excited. And then, of course, there's plenty of individuals that are like, well, that only happened because 3 minutes ago they did this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's dope, man. But like, did you see when it happened though?
Yeah,
you know what
see
I mean?
this particular moment? Like, I'm like so excited about. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. And if I'm just watching a broadcast, I can actually sit there. Like, I'll sit and talk to my partner, and I'm like, oh, like this is the big brain play of it all. But I cannot in the moment while broadcasting whatsoever. Like, if I'm there sitting and talking about the game, I love to do it from a play by play standpoint.
I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. So you and I actually go unique relationship we have in terms of how we met and stuff like that, and it was pretty excellent to see our paths cross kind of yet again, right? We kind of diverged and able to come back together. But I think it was 2018. Was it Roanoke Regionals or Greensboro Regionals that you were producing? And I was actually a play-by-play commentator on that one, and that was for the Pokemon trading card game. And what a ride that weekend was. Holy smokes.
What a ride all of those weekends were, honestly. I think the experience overall was necessary for some self-growth and some self-reflection. But I will say the whole thing was very chaotic and was very negative in a lot of different ways. But I'm glad it overall led to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, one of the few shining lights out of that is we got to be friends, which I think is pretty awesome. And although we're not always in each other's like Venn diagrams, we don't overlap too often. It's nice when we our experiences do, and we get to share moments like the March finals and get into that. And it's kind of funny, of course. You're in production then, which is clearly not. I don't want to speak for you, but I was gonna say it felt like obviously your heart is being in front of the camera and being in the action. So it's nice to see where you are now, of course, and having us gotten to work together, which actually kind of leads me to which you had sent me in chat when we found out we were both going to be working this, and you're like, man, I'm glad I'm working with you, but I hope we don't cast together because we will be all over each other on that play-by-play.
Yeah, it's like, would it be really cool given like the history, like I produced the events that you were casting on to then be on like the same cast casting together. Yeah. Do I recognize that you are a fantastic play-by-play and I refuse to do color and therefore it's going to be the absolute worst match ever and therefore worst broadcast ever? Well, 100%.
I mean, I felt the same way. We're just like, man, it would be cool, but also, would it be cool? Like, it would be cool for two people, and that's you and I. And after that, I think it would be a miserable experience for everybody else. So that did work out in our benefit and how they paired us all up. But still glad we got to work. Let's jump back again to a previous conversation we were having until we figured out we weren't muted, or figured out we were muted. You got into casting. A lot of work goes into casting. And the specific question I'd asked you is, Pokemon VGC is kind of where you started your casting, but went into Valorant. And those two games are so radically different. And how did you make that jump? Like, how did you make that jump and feel comfortable with it, with them being two completely separate games?
Yeah. A lot of practice. A lot of sitting there and going over VODs, watching others to recognize what that esport in general entails. Of course, casting fundamentals are pretty similar across the board, if not actually the same across the board. Mm-hmm. But what each game demands from it is very different at times. And it was I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity right away to have like an actual set duo so that I could then sit and talk with and practice with. We got to do grassroots events together. We got to sit there and practice casts together and review them together to then really make sure that I could be on par for what Valorant as an esports demands. Because it, man, I cannot tell you the amount of messages that I sent to my duo right out of the gate. Like, I don't know timing for this. I don't know when to throw to you. I don't know when not to throw to you. Like, I don't know. And we had to work through that. And it was difficult, but, if you put in that work, it's possible.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Was your casting duo, were they already had some, had already dipped their toes in the Valorant waters and were able to kind of help you navigate that? Or was this just something like, well, we're learning it together. Here we go.
No, it was a very experienced partner, thank goodness. Shout out Keg Shouts, absolutely amazing. But he's actually casted for Valorant before, so that was amazing. So I already went into it with someone who was experienced and knew what they were doing. It was a little bit of a transition because he was transitioning from a play-by-play role into a color role, but that also meant that he was very experienced with that play-by-play and could actually help me fully get into that role, which was really nice. And I do recognize that's not really an opportunity that everybody gets, but I do encourage anyone trying to get into casting to at least find some friends that you can actually practice that with, because I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, practicing goes without saying, and you said practice a couple times. How does practicing work? Like, again, I know because you told me. Because I literally kind of laid out like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I know you're on a different level. You're working through some different stuff. Like, what am I missing? What's the part, like the cogs in the machine that I don't have that really gets this thing ginning forward? So tell us a little bit about what like you practice to you is.
Yeah, so for myself, for practicing, a lot of reviewing and just going over and doing new casts. So reviewing your old casts, if it's casting for a new game, reviewing casts that other people have done of that game or for something similar. So I know when I talked to you about Unite, I recommended reviewing like League of Legends and Wild Rift because it would be something that's it's along the same realm, although there's a lot of differences. The casting style is still similar. But then it's just reviewing those VODs and going back and seeing what's working, what's not, what you like listening to, what you don't, and then getting another opinion on it as well, because the opinions and thoughts, everyone's different, but the ones in the scene that you respect could help lend a different perspective that you might not have. And I recommended this to you as well, but community feedback, though it can feel great, though it can seem great, will always generally come from a place of biasness, which doesn't necessarily always lend the best feedback into what you can and can't improve.
And that was one of the I don't want to say harshest lessons because it's not like it impacted me in a negative way, but it was a very eye-opening piece of advice because you kind of think that people that care about you and want to be successful will give you just shoot right to the core of whatever the concerns are. But they like you, so why would they do that? And then there's the other side of the coin. There's a lot of people that don't like you, whether it's your casting style, you as a human being for whatever it is, the fact that you're wearing purple or, whatever that is. And then they just drag you through the mud with no sort of constructive criticism that you can pull out of. And it's just, it's a tough balancing act with no real value on either side of the coin. So when you told me that, I was like, that makes total sense. That's where I need to be leaning to. And of course, for me, that person immediately became you. So I just started slinging stuff over to you and like, well, what happened here? And helping me out has certainly and clearly paid dividends because I was able to cast 2 events, and that's awesome. Like that's 2 more events than I could have ever imagined. So here we are. It's working out.
I mean that's also due to you because you've been putting in a hella work with Pokemon Unite. So I cannot express how glad I was to see you get on those broadcasts because I think it was a long time coming for other games, and I'm glad to see it for Unite. So.
Well, Sierra, I certainly appreciate you saying that. So let's talk about a little bit about the March finals. We can't, not talk about Pokemon Unite. That it is late night Unite. How did you feel about that whole experience? I know you have some other things to compare it to just in terms of production, but that's not really what I'm going towards. I'm like, how did you feel casting that event?
Honestly, it was a lot of fun. I was really nervous getting into it because I think it might be one of the more unique casting experiences I've had. There's been a couple weird ones, but it's such a grassroots level that it's like, okay, if it's weird or it's bad, it doesn't really matter. Which thankfully I actually haven't had a bad experience, so that's nice. But that's a different thing. But being it something for Pokemon on a bigger level and not really knowing what to expect going into it, like I was definitely nervous, but it ended up being so much fun. Like I didn't realize how much I would enjoy it. At the end of the day, I was still like so pumped and so excited. And I'm like, there is no more games to cast. Like this is sad. Like I'd actually want this to go on longer. Like I don't know. It's a fun game to cast. Like I love Pokemon. I love Pokemon Unite, but I didn't think that I would have just as much fun as I did.
It was a great time. We were fortunate enough to have a pretty good group, and everybody was in each other's ears. Right when, something Spraggles and I started in the February finals that we obviously continued. The March finals was, I don't know how it started or who started it, but we just started like mumbling "I love you" as many times as we could while the timer was running down, and then just kind of like hopping off the mic. And to see that energy continue, and then all three of us just kind of jumping on Jeff because he would never say it. Like he would just never say it. Which it was just a good. It felt laid back. I was incredibly nervous. I always kind of get just almost you can't wait to start, but at the same time like time is flying, but like super slow at the same time. But the fact that we were all having just nice banter was just a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like I was super super nervous, and then when we had rehearsal and actually like kind of sat down and went through it, I was like, oh okay, like this isn't actually really that scary. And then got like a second bout of nerves, but like y'all were amazing, and I really do think like having great co-casters and good production makes it a lot better. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm lucky that that was the only time I've gotten to experience it. So I was like, well, yeah, it's pretty cool. This is how
okay.
this is how it's supposed to be done, rather than like having one person stand over a TCG table with their phone trying to record a
Oh
video
my god.
while it's like getting streamed back to a different computer. So I'm just that cluster that is as you're certainly experienced with is those grassroots streams.
Yeah, those were. I mean, I feel like grassroots streams are important. Don't get me wrong. I just think, yeah, you know how I feel. You know how I feel about that whole experience that we went through
Mm.
producing the grassroots regionals. I think it was a great thing for the community. I think on the inside it could have been dealt with a little bit better. But like I said, valuable learning lessons. Sometimes you need those in this industry.
Yeah, or humbling ones, or at least ones to give you better direction moving forward. Lessons learned. Either way,
Yeah,
lessons learned.
exactly.
Lessons learned. So the March finals were just an absolute ride. How about those NA finals? How those things shook out? Holy smokes! I was so like just pumped up for how that the NA finals ended and like that finals like last second Blissey dunk. And this is not an exaggeration at all. Um, Went downstairs, talked to my wife, and she was like, that was crazy. Like, I don't know how this game works, but that seems super intense. I was like, right? And then I literally ordered a pizza, sat on the couch, and just ate pizza, like waiting to get tired. And I just stayed up
Good.
until like 3 in the morning, just watching TV because I was like, well, I'll get tired eventually because I just had a long day, shouting the whole time. Just never got tired. I was just so amped up from that game.
Honestly, the finals were amazing. Like, I know obviously when me and Spraggles weren't casting, like, we're sitting there, we could technically go do anything, but we sat and watched all the games, and to see that, like, it was amazing because, of course, there is a stream delay. So we get to sit there and watch it. So I watched that happen live, and then I like stopped. I muted the tab and I went back to the Twitch stream so I could watch it again 3 minutes later. It was so good. I'm really happy that you casted that too because it's like obviously play by plays bring the hype, but like exactly how you executed it, I think was really well done, and it just made the moment better. So I
It
don't know. It
was
was a good ending.
If I never get another bite at the apple, man, I'm happy that that's the last thing I said in a Pokemon Unite game on a Pokemon stream because that was just a ride. Sierra, I actually watched you play Valorant earlier today. Um,
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Trust me, I don't know anything about the game, so it looked great. You're doing amazing. Valorant, we know, box checked. we don't know what the future holds, but what is your path forward in terms of esports commentary, esports hosting as an esports talent? Are you looking to develop into other games or branch out into other games in terms of the casting side? Are you looking to get more hosting opportunities and kind of lean into that direction? Or is it just, hey, we'll take it as it comes?
So I think going forward, I actually had a really big talk with a broadcast producer and someone else from so the other person. There was a Valorant Game Changers caster training clinic back in October that I went to,
I
and
remember that.
one of the people that helped ran it and made the initiative, Shelby. I actually sat down and talked to her a lot about that future in casting and hosting going forward, because I think there's a lot of people that try to do both, and I will do as both for as long as I can. But I think ultimately for myself, like the future that I see for myself in 5-10 years is a lot more hosting oriented. I think, like, not to be full of myself, I think it's a pretty natural skill that I have just because of the fact I've been creating content for 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
sitting and staring at my camera. I think that is invaluable experience to be having, and I think that shows, and I think that I I'd be stupid to not pursue it at that level. Like, I've only been casting since September, but I've only been hosting since January, and the opportunities that I've had since I've decided to start hosting has been absolutely incredible. It's been amazing. Things went so fast and they seem to only get bigger. So it's like, I love casting. I'll still cast where I can, but hosting gives me a little bit of a more secure future. It gives me
Mm-hmm.
better opportunities. And I actually do love it because it does allow me to branch into games that I wouldn't be comfortable casting, but definitely would be comfortable talking about on a hosting level. So I get to experience more of the esports world.
So what's the prep like from a host versus, a cast? I mean, I know on a granular level it should be fairly obvious, but like from just kind of a top-down view, when people are thinking like host, do you actually need to know much? But I feel like you really do because you have to be able to drive conversation. Is that true?
Yeah, like there's actually a lot of prep that goes into it because it might not really seem like it from an outside perspective to everyone, but you're right. You're driving the conversation. You're there to be setting up the show, setting up the talent, set up the story, set up the game, set up everything that's happening. So you're driving the show. You're making sure also a lot of event sponsors reads and making sure that everyone else on the broadcast can look good while also being respectful of production times. There's certain deliverables and things that you have to hit before you send a caster, send a game. All that needs to get hit. There's all the graphics and everything that's on the graphics, like, you should know. Like, there is a difference between a prepared host and a non-prepared host. For example, League of Legends. I don't understand the game on the same level that a caster does, but I will go in there prepared, understanding, okay, well, this is our head to head between these two players, and it's impactful for this reason. This team is at this record for this reason. These are the stars players. Like, this is what we're looking for. Like, these are keynotes, and understand on at least that fundamental level so I can drive that conversation home. Especially, too, once you get to the interviews, if you don't do any prep and you're going to sit there in the interview and not know what to say to this person you're sitting there with, it's going to be a little awkward.
Um, when you are hosting and you're going into those interviews, it's just a question that just hit me. Do you have like personally prepped questions that you're like, oh, this was a moment in the game that I kind of want to like take mental note of, or are those some things like, hey, here's a litany of things you could talk about, pick what you think is most important, or how does that work out?
So normally while I'm watching the game, once I know who's going to be interviewed, I'll quickly check socials, just to make sure I'm 100% tuned with, like, okay, this is exactly who this person is. Sometimes I don't get to that step. That's not necessarily mandatory, though it's nice. But while watching the games, I'll write down key moments and kind of things about how the series went. I'm specifically talking about Valorant because this is the one that's most recently happened, but things that have most recently happened, and write down some questions, but then it's only like a guideline. I like to kind of hop into the conversation and see how it goes. So if I'm talking about a moment in the game and they start talking instead about a teammate and how they're shining and they're doing amazing, then instead of just like my pre-prepped questions being like, oh, okay, well, in this game this moment happened, I'll then be like, okay, so you're talking about this individual player, like, how has it been being able to work with her, especially since she's now like the in-game leader of your team? Like, how's, like, I'll try and keep that conversation going in the same way that the interviewee is taking it, because I think it lends to a lot more of an authentic conversation.
That makes a lot of sense. And it also means that, I mean, you can't just, you don't just have to know about the player, you have to know about the team and at least tangentially about the other players in case they do, like you said, diverge to that path and be able to continue that natural conversation forward.
Yeah, and I think too, like, there's certain ways to approach the conversation. There's obviously some interviewers that can get right into the nitty gritty of the game. So, like, an interview I asked about a very specific moment in a very specific round because I recognized that moment. I thought it was a substantial moment. I thought it was also kind of funny. So we could specifically talk about that. But then the interviews that I did for League, there was obviously gameplay questions, but I also make sure that the questions that I'm asking are things that I understand myself on a fundamental level.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not just asking something that I don't understand the response to. Like if I'm asking, oh, okay, well, you played specifically this champion instead of this champion. How do you think this champion is in the meta with all of these picks, with the new patch and all this, and something that I don't fully understand? I'm not gonna bother.
Yeah, I mean, and then you kind of work yourself into or paint yourself into a corner because if they say something that you should be able to bounce off of and just can't because you did paint yourself into that corner, it can certainly break up that authentic flow that you work towards that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think too, I specifically talked to another host about this. I asked about that gap of knowledge for myself, and she said that it's actually kind of nice sometimes that you don't have that same level of knowledge as a analyst or a caster does, because it means you get to ask questions that would be more similar from a fan perspective. So, for example, you were saying that you don't understand Valorant as much. So, if I'm asking, oh, specifically, how did you like Brimstone in the meta now that there's been all of these nerfs across the board to Astra, and how do you think that influenced things? And those are the only questions I ask, then you as a viewer aren't necessarily going to understand as much. Whereas if I'm like, hey, you lost the first game and you managed to bounce back, take it into overtime, that has to be a feeling. I might not be talking specifically about the very nitty gritty of the game conversation, but it is a general scope and one that people could also at home relate to.
That makes total sense. And that's the type of stuff I appreciate, especially when I'm watching Valorant, because I still don't really know what's going on. You said your last casting opportunity was Valorant, but you've been working quite a bit on League, and in one specific, I don't know what, I guess, is it a league? Is it a league of League? Is that what it is?
Most recent one that I was working on was LCS Proving Grounds, which was a tournament structure. Or LFL, where it was the league?
Yeah, so that's like a league of League of Legends, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah,
I kind of want to
splits. It's kind of weird.
Okay, so is it like 3 splits a year? I'm like shooting from the hip here.
Yeah, we got it. There's a spring split and then there's a summer split. So
okay, so 2 ish. Okay, so how was that experience? Because that was that was a weekend, week in, week out, and you're kind of following and developing the storylines, kind of the ones that you want to keep people abreast of. So tell us a little bit about that.
Honestly, it was really cool. Going into that too, like I not a clue of League of Legends. I played one single game and it was a really bad experience because of kind of I didn't have the understanding of the game, and then the group was sweaty. They're like, do this. I didn't understand what was going on, and it was just a bad 40 minutes of my time. They're like, don't hit this. And I'm like, why? Aren't you supposed to hit? There's the minions I wasn't supposed to hit because I was support. They're like, don't kill them. And I'm like, but why? Aren't I supposed to kill things? And then they're like, why didn't you kill this? And I'm like, because you said no. Whatever. So then I had to actually learn for the league, but it was really interesting that it was then a league that you got to follow through till the end. So throughout the split, you got to see just the emerging storylines and the teams and stuff, and it was cool too because it also my own knowledge of league actually increased with that. But it was absolutely amazing. I would love to be able to host more things like from a actual whole league perspective, because I think it actually is a lot different to watch the same players every single week, because you get to see those improvements, you get to see just how the teams are developing, and then you get to see some teams fall off a little bit, especially as other ones pop up. And I think being able to tell those stories was amazing. Like there was one team, I think it ended up being like 0-15. They went 0-15. Like absolutely dumpstered every game. They got close to winning one game. It was at a LAN. They had the crowd cheering their name because they couldn't get a win and they still lost. And
Oh,
then they made a
brutal.
roster change and then they won a couple of games. And it was so insane to then see this team that was like the meme because they always lost to then all of a sudden be this team that was taking some wins. And sure, you're still like them, like what, 1-15, 2-15, but there was actually improvements that you saw from all the players that you had been following for the last 3 months at that point, which is actually a really cool thing looking at it in retrospect. So sorry, I'm very wordy.
No, no, and that's a great. I mean, that's the type of stories that you want to tell, right? Bring everybody along for that 0-15, so you do get the crowd just going, absolutely off the wall when they do get that first win. I mean, I'm sure there's people that were watching that just absolutely came unglued, like finally they did it, like they got there, right? Now the LFL, can you tell us like what league that is? It's a European league. Am I right? Am I
Yeah.
wrong? Okay.
Yeah, it's the
Tell us
French league. So it's
So,
the French league, and then they had some significant players join the league. Cody Sun and Reckless being two of them, and then they have some players that did play on a higher level that are playing in this league. So there's enough hype around this league. Well, there's actually like the French stream is insane viewership. So there is so much about it that they wanted to have an English broadcast of it too.
and that's awesome. And was this the first English broadcast they had done when they brought you on board, or
Yeah.
had they already done one? Okay, so you got to be the first voice of the LFL to the
Yeah.
English watchers.
Yeah, which is really cool because there was a lot of English viewers that have been tuning into the French stream and still do, because there's also like the talent for the French stream is amazing as well. But it was like they've just made sure they wanted to stay tuned with these players, like they're fans of these players, and then it was cool being able to bring that to them and be able to bring out a broadcast so people who didn't understand French could actually maybe understand our broadcast and create more fans along the way.
How is I don't want to say the language disparity, but being part of a game that is so ingrained in two kind of set languages. Obviously, you said the French broadcast is huge. You being Canadian, you might actually know a decent amount of French for sure. But how was it for you in that particular transitionary phase of the language itself?
So it was actually nice because no French was required to work on it. I did check that beforehand, so I am technically bilingual. I graduated with bilingual dogwood, government tested, all that. It's been years. The French ain't that great. I did check beforehand because I said I'd brush up on it, but no, we get sent the stream and then we cast over it. So we do have we have our own little studio where I get to be with the casters. It's all in house, and then we just get sent the feed. So like some of the game things is obviously French, but it's not significant enough to where it actually changes anything. The only thing that sucks is if they do a live player interview from their end. So they did when they had their LAN. They had one in Nice. Obviously, the interview's in French, and it would have been cool if it wasn't. But since that's a French broadcast, it's very obviously French. So
Do they do like subtitles or some amount of closed captioning when that comes up?
probably not. I'm not 100% sure.
Might be tough on the fly. Might be tough
Yeah,
on the
that's
fly.
kind of what I'm thinking. Like, I think Twitch has like some built-in things. I don't know if they have them implemented. Because obviously when that's happening, we're doing our broadcast, so I don't get to actually tune in.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Sierra, I'm not going to beat the brakes off you too much longer. I appreciate you taking some time here at Late Night Unite and, of course, giving kind of the framework for young, aspiring esports talents, casters, hosts out there on kind of what your path to success was and something that if they work hard and emulate, probably have a pretty good chance. So thank you for laying all that out. But I just want to give you a moment to just lay it out online, shout out, plug all your stuff, let people know where they can find you, and anything else you want to spill the tea about.
Yeah, so first off, you're saying sharing some of the way to how to make it to success. I do want to say as well that every journey is different. There's been people who have been working at it for years, and there's people who will get a break right away. I very much so believe that there's a lot of luck necessary, but it's also that passion and that work to put in that when you get lucky and you get that opportunity, that you can back it up with the skill and the hard work that you have. So anyone who is pursuing a journey out there, just because someone's making it a little faster, just because you're watching somebody else do these things you wish that you could do, it doesn't mean that it's not for you. It just means that that's not on your path yet. Shout outs, of course, to my wonderful boyfriend Joe. You're awesome. To my friends who wanted me to be playing Valorant with them right now, that are all sitting there waiting, as well as my Twitch community, because frankly, I wouldn't have gotten my opportunity casting for Pokemon if I wasn't creating content already for Pokemon, and they were the ones that allowed me to be able to pursue that for a full time. So I frankly wouldn't have any of this without them. So yeah.
And where can they find you on Twitter?
Oh, Twitter.com/Sierra Dawn X3. Maybe one day I can get the Sierra Dawn at, but not today. So and if you ever want really subpar Valorant gameplay, Sierra Dawn on Twitch. We at least have some laughs. So
I mean, I love being in there, and I just have loved watching again your journey, and love that our paths crossed again, and of course elated that you took some time to talk to me tonight and put this out there for everyone. But I have all the stuff that I need to go through. Of course, this has been Late Night Unite on the Unite Mics Twitch channel. Of course, you can find us on YouTube at Unite Mics. You can find us on Twitter, Unite Mics. It's all the same. All the same. For those of you that are watching on Twitch right now, we did just get a bunch of cool emotes, which I'm very excited about. We filed for Twitch Partner, which is great. And something I want to shout out, this Saturday, Zoinks and I are doing a full cast of the AOS Cup qualifier, and we've got 6 different teams we've got lined up to follow them through their journey to see if they can qualify. So it's going to be an absolute barn burner. Tune into that. But I'm not going to delay this anymore. On behalf of Sierra Dawn, I'm Kirk doobsnax Dubé. Thank you for tuning to Late Night Unite, and we'll maybe catch you next week at our normal time, Tuesdays, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Be safe out there. We appreciate you.